Berkshire is the largest shareholder in both Occidental and Chevron. At the end of Berkshire's first quarter, its Chevron stake clocked in at more than $21 billion, but that was a drop of nearly $9 billion from the previous quarter, while at the end of March, Berkshire boosted its stake in Oxy to about 24% of that company. Joining me now to discuss Buffett's energy bets is CNBC.com reporter Yun Lee. And Yun, it's great to see you.
Great to see you, too.
So that decline in the Chevron stake was not just Chevron share price going down. They were a net seller of the shares.
Right. Chevron was down for 9% in the first quarter. But I did the calculation. Berkshire did sell about $6 billion of Chevron. So he trimmed a little bit for the second quarter, actually. He did that also in the fourth quarter. And Berkshire was a net seller of stocks last quarter as well. About $10 billion worth of stocks. And I was thinking about, what he might have sold during the quarter. Do you think it could be Paramount? Because, Paramount had a tough week last week, down almost 30%. Earnings miss, dividend cut. And in Japan with Becky, Buffett mentioned that, streaming is not a very good business. So I was wondering if this is just speculation.
Sure.
If he thought Paramount could be bought, could be taken over because of the consolidations in the media industry. Or he probably dumped it in the last quarter, so we'll see.
Yeah, in fact, John Rogers of Ariel, who we spoke to this morning, who is also an owner of Paramount, said he was very eager to hear that as well. Right. There has been some speculation. We should be clear that in the 10Q, in the quarterly filing, they only disclose the very largest equity holdings.
Top
so
five.
We know that they were a net seller of about $10 billion of equities. You could say that Chevron was, 6 or 7 billion of that, or more?
Yeah, 6 billion.
And so, therefore, there's $4 billion in sales that we can only speculate on.
Right. Yeah.
And we were talking about Activision as well.
Mm-hmm. Activision, it was one of his investing managers who bought Activision first before the Microsoft deal announcement, and then Buffett, he added to about $4 billion, and then he said it was a merger arbitrage play. And now that, the UK regulators, they just blocked the deal. So the chances of the deal going through are pretty slim right now. So, we'll see what happens with that bet.
And did anything else stand out to you this morning in terms of the Q&A, in terms of how Buffett spoke about how he's thinking about his investments?
Yeah, so I think there was a very interesting debate about value investing. And, and Charlie and Warren, they kind of disagree on that, too. Right. And Charlie put it very plainly. He said, just get used to making less. And Buffett, he was actually very optimistic. He said there's always opportunities. And what gives you opportunities is actually other people doing dumb things.
That's right.
Right? And he's known for jumping into the market when people are panicking, when people are selling. And he also talked about buying more under the radar opportunities, like what he did with Japan. He bought 5 trading companies in Japan, a very large bet for Berkshire. And he said in the room, he's not done with Japan, he's looking for more.
He characterized that investment almost as incredibly obvious. It was a no-brainer. You could borrow in yen. We have, more coming in dividend yield than we are paying in debt. He also, though, did describe his sale of Taiwan Semiconductor after only holding it for a short period.
Right. And he kind of mentioned it was a consideration of the geopolitical tension. Nothing too serious, but there's some volatility around there. And it is very rare to see him, go in and out a position that quickly within the quarter. But he spoke very positively about China and how... And Charlie Munger put it like, he said, the conflict between the U.S. and China is very, very stupid. Yes. And we should encourage more free trade between the two countries. They
both seem to agree on that, although Charlie seems to think that there's a little more opportunity, at least in his own, investing in some domestic Chinese companies. It's interesting. Now, he also, Buffett or Berkshire, bought back a fair amount of stock in the first quarter as well, right?
Yes.
$4.4 billion.
$4.4 billion, more than, it's the most amount of buyback since the fourth quarter of 2021.
Okay.
So it's pretty significant. And so Berkshire only buys back shares when they think it's trading at a significant discount to intrinsic value. But now the Berkshire stock is almost back, not that close, far away from its record high, almost at $500 $100,000.
Yeah, and in fact, I think the stock now is valued about 1.4 times book value.
Right.
That's on the upper end of its historical range. It doesn't
Right.
capture the whole intrinsic value as they would
Right.
calculate it. But it is quite fascinating. Not a lot of specifics about banks or financial holdings.
No, not at all. And not a question directly about the cash holding. It was about $130 billion at the end of the last quarter. And, you know, I think Buffett has been waiting this long with interest rate at 0, but now interest rates are at 5%. So it will take something even more special for him to pull the trigger. And he's happy to wait, and he's getting paid for waiting right now.
That's a great point, and he did talk about how they just obviously on all the cash, all the float, they really do have an opportunity. It's baked in that they're going to have a lot more interest income. I did like the way he described the float, the amount of cash that comes in through their insurance business. He said, it's like we have a bank with no customers, no employees, and nobody can pull their money out. Nobody can pull deposits out. Certainly seeming to draw a contrast between actual banks right now dealing with
deposits and insurance business. Very different.
Also likes to, I think, essentially point out the strengths of his insurance business relative to anything that looks like a startup or a high-tech fintech.
Yes, especially Geico, who had been struggling a little bit when compared to Progressive, its biggest competitor. And now it turned a profit. It turned a big underwriting profit this quarter.
It was a big swing in the first quarter.
Yeah, the big swing. And Ajit was very happy about it.
Exactly. He had a good story to tell this year versus last year on that score. Yun, thanks very much. We'll talk to you again soon.